Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video in SAP Manufacturing Consultant channel. Please, this is a part 2 video for master recipe. So if you haven't seen the first one, please go and watch the first one first, please, because this is just a second part. Okay, so you will not understand completely if you start watching from this one onwards. Okay, please go to the part 1. I will leave the link in the video, please. Okay, so if you already watched the first one, then you can proceed with this one. Okay, this is just a summary. In part 1, we have maintained the header and we have maintained the operations. Now we need to go to maintain the production standard values. Okay, I had to save the master recipe, so we will handle this as an edit, okay, or modify with C202. Then we will do the material assignment, then production version, assign the components to phases, and maintain the QM data in the in-process inspection characteristics. Okay, I hope we can do this in part 2 all together from point 3 to 7. Let's see. Okay, let's jump right in. Okay, since I mentioned that I had to save the master recipe, now we need to go to C202. Okay, this is the recipe group that was assigned, and this is the recipe counter we set, right? We set 0 for, let's say, semi-finished products, okay, or bulk. Okay, press enter here. So we have all the operations and phases created. Now we need to go to maintain the standard production values. Okay, the standard production values are related to the activities we have defined at the resource here. Okay, so every resource had, in our case, we created one resource, which is this one, but all the others were created in a similar way. Okay, so we had basically what is called the activities, right? And you can see here the activities. So there are two ways we can maintain this. We can maintain this with here, from here, I would say, or going directly into the face. Okay, you can go double click this face, and then you have to define here the production standard values. Okay, let's assume we will produce, for example, in 1000 kgs in 1 hour of machine time and 1 hour of labor. Let's assume the people we should be with the machine all the time. Okay, one thing we can skip in this case is the setup. Okay, I decided not to consider setup, so that's why we don't have an activity type here. Okay, basically the setup might be used for certain type of industries where you need to like start warming up, for example, before you can start using. But in our case, it's just simple units that can be turned on and start working uh, almost immediately. So we don't need to worry about a setup time. Okay, but of course, there's always that setup time, really, right? But it's up to the controlling people as well if they need to keep track of this, or we can just assume that it's part of the machine time from 0 to finished, right? Okay, so basically we're saying in a simple way that we need one machine hour and one labor to produce 1000 for this phase. Okay, keep in mind that this is specific for this resource, okay, at this phase. Okay, okay, let me go back. We maintain this. As you can see here, there's a 1 and 1 here for 1000, right? Then we have this second phase, again, you can select and go here, operation details, the same thing. Let's double click, okay? Then we can put, let's assume we have the same remuneration drum. Let's assume in this case we have 2 hours, okay? But we have only one for labor because you don't need to be all the time while this granular drum is working, let's say, okay? Let's go back. And then we will do the same thing, okay? I can double click or I can go here and maintain it directly. Let's assume for the dry chamber, we need 1 hour and we just need zero 0.5 hours, okay? Keep in mind, this is hours, no minutes, so we need to put half 0 0.5 to 30 minutes, right? This is the same as 30 minutes. Then for the 41, we can maintain it here as well. As you can see, sometimes it's easier, or you can just double click, right? One thing I was forgetting was to put the base quantity, okay, for this time. And then we have, for example, for this is the screening. Yeah, let's assume 1 hour as well. 1 hour here. This 1000 can be set up at the header level. Okay, if it's set up at the header, we should have here all 1000s. Okay, automatically, but that's okay. You can do it also from here. And actually, remember that you can also put some other values here. For example, this is for 1 hour, but if you want to keep everything by 1 hour, okay, and you need 2 hours for 1000, then maybe you can put 1 hour here and 500 kgs only as a base quantity, right? The base quantity, it's per phase, okay? So you can do the right proportions here. So just to keep it simple, we continue with 1 hour for per 1000 kgs production, okay? Then we have the in-process inspection. In this case, as I mentioned, we're not going to populate anything, and actually it's not costing relevant anymore, so no need to maintain anything here, okay? Then we have the last phase, which is basically the process and the milestone confirmation. But keep in mind that this is also process, okay? So it's a coding and 19K in treatment. Let's assume we have 1 hour as well and 1 hour of labor, okay? So we're finished maintaining all the activities, okay? That's it. Let's jump into the next subject. Okay, so the next subject is to assign the material assignment, okay? So we go to the recipe header again, and this is the button to maintain the material assignments. Okay, so we press the button here, and we can assign the material here. Okay, I think it's gonna be, no, I don't have it, but it's without all this information. The plant D01 and the recipe counter. It's, sorry, I clicked on the drop down menu instead of the field here. Recipe counter we define is 0, okay? So basically we are assigning this material to this plant, to this recipe group, and the recipe counter 0, okay? I will press enter, the system will validate, and it's picking up the information already, okay? So let me go back. Oh, I need to save it. Let me just go back to the recipe here. Okay, this is the recipe 0. Okay, we do double click again, and the material is already there anyway. Okay, see, it's already there. So I will save it just in case. There are some log, but we will take care of this in a minute because the log is saying basically that we need to put some inspection characteristics, right? See, inspection characteristic is not maintained. So yes, we will do that. Okay. Let me just save it. And let's jump into the next subject. So we have two options to create production versions. We can go directly to C223 and create a production version from there, or we can create a production version from inside the master recipe. So this latter will be the approach I'm going to follow here. Okay, so basically will be inside the master recipe. Press enter here, just recipe header. Yeah, basically we cover the recipe header, we cover operations, and now all the next time will be materials. Okay, so what happened when we go to materials, the system will require a production version. Okay, because basically the materials tab is to assign the materials to the different phases. Okay, so when I press here, a pop-up should show up, right? Yeah, here you go. So P001 will be the production version. And there are two ways of creating a bill of material. We can create a bill of material first with CSO1, like we did. So you can check that video if you want. Or we can create the bill of material inside the master recipe. If we create the bill of material inside the master recipe, it can only be modified from inside the master recipe. Okay, this is the typical way to get more traceability. Okay, but for the sake of understanding bill of material in general, I did the last video, so the bill of material was already created. In that case, we just can select the bill of material. Instead of creating a new one, we can select the one it's already created. Okay, so this way, with this production version, we will have the link between these two elements, right? The plan, the master recipe, and the bill of material. Let me check. We have the task list that exists and the bill of material that exists. This means that they're in the validity period, okay? They're correct. So let me cancel this and let me accept this. And that's it. We created the production versions. Since we created these production versions, as you can see here, the system knows exactly what the components are and is suggesting the components to be assigned to operations phases in this tab. Okay, but that's going to be um, the next activity. Okay, thank you. Okay, the material assignment um, to phases here. Basically, you will assign a specific material to a certain operational phase here. Okay, the idea of this is when you have a very long processing time, you don't need all the raw materials to be that day, right? And the production supply area, for example, if you're using extended warehouse management or just in time, right, or Kanban, etc. So to define exactly when you need this raw material, the material assignment to the phases, it's crucial, right? So if it's just a short process, maybe it does not make sense, and maybe you can have everything ready at the beginning of the process, right? But it's up to you to define, or up to the company to define the type of processes they have, right? And you will decide what to do. The important thing here is to understand that this is a functionality that lets you assign specifically, right, these materials to a specific phase, for example. Okay, like I mentioned before, when we're creating the phases, I mentioned that you can have a phase per raw material, right? You can assign a raw material. You can have some control recipe sent, so you can get some process message right? And get some confirmation that was added completely and that kind of stuff, right? So just for the sake of this test, I'm going to select all these components and I will assign this to one face, okay? And then I will show you how we assign this into other faces, okay? So let me create this assignment here. This is the icon. I will assign it to, you can check all the operations and faces you have, okay? So this is a mixing unit, okay? So I can assign it to this phase, or I can assign it to this operation as well, okay? I can assign it to the initial operation, for example. Again, if you're having multiple phases to assign a specific material to those phases, then it's going to be phase by phase, right? But in this case, it's going to be into operation 10. There you are, okay? And then let's assume the limestone, we can assign it to another phase. This is just for the sake of, for you understand that we can do this in different uh, processes, right? Or different phases and operations, sorry. So we have operation 20, let me assign it to phase 21 for the operation 20 in this case. Okay, see, it's assigned to the phase with superior operation 20. In this case, you realize it's assigned to a phase. And the last one, I'm going to assign it to, this is the coating. Therefore, I will assign it to the coating and anti-caking operation. Okay, here you go. There you are. So we have assigned all the materials to the operations. Okay, so we finished. You can, of course, delete the assignment and reassign, etc. Okay, so you can do all this stuff as well here. Okay, let's jump to the next topic. Okay, the next topic is to maintain the QM data, and that's the last one to finish this video. Okay, basically we said that we have this phase 51 phase that belongs to operation 50 with the QM01 control key that will allow us QM QM01 detail information will allow us to have inspection characteristics required. Okay, basically we need to select, and we have the following icon here which says inspection characteristics, right? So we press this icon or button and we can assign characteristics here. Okay, I will do this very simple one. I think I have it there. Yes, it could be visual inspection. It could be this would be just for dust determination. Okay, and would be plan T01. When you press enter, the system will check and will require if something is not assigned yet. Okay, for example, assembly procedure. I will just select this for this. For now, I will check this one. Okay, I will assign this one, and I need to assign an SPC criteria would be master inspection characteristic material, for example. Okay, very simple one. We want by master inspection characteristic and the material. Yeah. Okay, so we assign one and we can continue assigning others. Note that the inspection method was coming from the master inspection characteristic. Otherwise, you can assign it here, okay? One thing to mention here is that we are doing a complete copy model, okay? So we don't have to worry, but if you are using incomplete copy model, you should finish defining the range, for example, right? Like quantitative data, right? Oops, sorry, I need to select it. See, we have already defined a range, but if this was not selected, right, we need to define the range there. Okay, no, I mean, if it was not a complete copy model, okay? So when it's complete copy model or a reference, master inspection characteristic, you don't need to worry about it, right? You only need to, let's say, adjust when it's an incomplete copy model. Okay, so we have covered the master inspection characteristic. Remember that the sample procedure was assigned in this situation, but there is something I would like to activate, which is basically a new function, not new functionality, but it's a specific functionality, which is the inspection points. Okay. To do that, we will go again to recipe header, and we have this button now, right? I mentioned before that this was gray out at the beginning, but now it's active, right? So we will click on this, and we need to assign inspection points. When you use inspection points, there are two basic ones. You can use the 100, fill and define, or something specific, of course, but typically 100 is enough. Or if we want to activate the sample management, we need to use 200. Okay, so I will, for the sake of some business cases or business scenarios, I will assign the inspection point 200 this time. Okay, I will assign not supported for the partial lots, and I need to assign simple drawing procedure as well in this case. Okay, this time we're not going to be dealing with the dynamic modification. We will have a specific video for that and more for raw materials. Although you can still do this for semi-finished good, the typical use is for raw materials. Okay, but of course you can use it also for semi-finished, including finished good if you want. We'll discuss that in a specific video. Okay, so let me just present it to validate. See, it's asking me to replace the sample procedure, because when you change inspection point from non-inspection point to inspection points, we need to have a specific sample procedure for that. That's okay. We will take care of that. Let's go to operations. We can go back to the QM phase, okay? And we need to go back to the inspection characteristic again. Now we can drop down, and now we will check something different. See, it's a different sample procedure. This one is active or valid for the sampling management. Okay, that's why, or inspection points. That's why we have to change that. One way to avoid that, to do this, go back and forth, you can go directly to the recipe header, activate inspection point, and then you maintain this. So you don't need to do this partial assignment I have done. Okay, but just for the sake of understanding the process, what you need to maintain is the inspection characteristic, and the inspection point is just a new functionality, an extra functionality, not new. I'm sorry. What I mean is that you need to activate, right? It's extra, let's say, functionality. Okay, so we cover that. There is another point we need to consider, which is the QM for the operation as well. Okay, so we will click on that. Since we are dealing with this functionality, which is sample management and inspection points at the same time, because it's share, right? The functionality. Actually, so there are two different functionalities. You can use inspection point without using sample management, or you can use it together. We are using those together, okay? So you can define here the recording view. Let's leave this default view, no problem. For inspection point completion, we can have quantity, evaluation, and confirmation in production, okay? Or we can have just valuation, automatic valuation based on inspection point definition. I will accept this one, okay? This is for the valuation, okay? And the other point we need to consider here is that what do we want to achieve with this inspection point? well, for this business processes scenario, for this processes scenario, we will consider a time related. Okay, so let me do this in minutes. It's going to be 60 or 1 hour. We can do 1 hour. Okay, so I'm going to be creating a new inspection point, which is in this case also a sample. Okay, every 1 hour. Of course. Okay, so let me just present it to validate everything. Yeah, and that's it. So keep in mind that we have maintained the following in summary for QM. We have maintained in the recipe header, quality management, we have maintained inspection point here and also the simple drawing procedure. Then at the operation level or phase level in this case, we have maintained the master inspection characteristics with this icon, right, or button. And for the operations, since we selected inspection points, we need to select how we can handle this or we want to handle these inspection points, okay? Like automatic valuation based on inspection point definition and time related every 1 hour. And that's it, okay? Let me save it. Okay, one important thing to do is basically after we finished to put all the production standard values, right? We are defining, for example, for this phase, it will take 1 hour, right, of labor or 1 hour of machine time, etc. In order to do the right scheduling, the system will need to know all these phases. What's the relationship between them, right? Because, for example, in the process industry, since you are doing all these phases in general, it means there is a sequence, right? It's a sequential. It's in the right order, right? You process 11 and then you process 21, then you process 31. This is a typical thing, especially in the process industries, okay? But there might be cases in other type of industries like discrete or including some chemicals as well, for example. You can be doing in parallel and not one of these processes. Okay, so if it's in parallel, it doesn't mean that we'll add up the quantity, right? Because it might be in parallel, right? So that kind of thing can be scheduled here, right, or defined here. We typically will do always the sequence. When one phase finishes, the other starts. Okay, that is the typical sequence we do, and this is what I'm going to do now here. But of course, you need to know that you might tweak a little bit if it's needed. Okay, so to create a relationship between them and to be sure we're adding all this up, right? Otherwise, the system will say, okay, you will start and finish your order after 2 hours, right? Because that's the longest time. But that's not true. The truth is that you will have 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay? So let me do it. You can start selecting the faces if you want, or you can go directly to this icon, which is basically the icon for creation of relationship. Okay? You press this icon, and then you have the chance to select all faces. That's a typical thing. And again, it's the finish start. Okay, finish start. Once one is finished, the other will start. It's a sequence, right? So you can generate. Okay, they were generated successful, and then you can see them graphically. I think, yeah, operation graphic relationship. And now you see that when this start, this is finished, this is starting after finished, and so on. See, until you finish. So, of course, the total time will be adding up all the time, right? Not necessarily after finishing the first one or the second, etc. This is the purpose, the main purpose of this relationship, as you can see. Okay, we're finished with that, and just the last step before we close the video is basically that after you do all this stuff, right, all the things we already covered, the header, the operations, the production and standard values, now the relationship, the QM data, the master inspection characteristic at a specific if needed, of course, right? You don't need necessarily to have inspection, but in general, process industries will always have a kind of an inspection, at least one inspection, even though it's a simple one, or sometimes it's more complex, as I said, calling in different phases, right? Or having many characteristics at the last point, right? Yeah. So basically, after doing all that, you need to go to this icon to check the master recipe group. Okay, if everything is fine, you should not see any message at all. Okay, not even informational messages. If you have any of them, you should check it and try to fix it. Okay, of course, warning in is, an error is not acceptable, right? But even informational sometimes is explaining something that shouldn't be, right? So you need to take a look at that as well. Okay, as you can see in this case, there's no messages, so we are good to go. Okay, we can use it. We can start creating process orders. Okay, and that's it. Okay, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to subscribe, to share, to like it, and if you want to support us in Patreon, you can also go to Patreon to SAP Manufacturing Consult. Thank you very much. I see you in the next video.